He set the iron key in her palm and stepped back like it might burn him. So why did it feel like he was giving her something no one else ever had? The screen door slammed behind her as voices rose in the yard, the sharp scratch of her father's pen still echoing from the debt ledger left open on the crate. Lila didn't look back. The wagon waited by the gate, dust already lifting around its wheels, and the man beside it, quiet, broad-shouldered, watching the ground instead of her, didn't reach out when she climbed up, not even when the wind caught her sleeve, not even when she nearly slipped. That was the first thing that didn't make sense. Most men took what they were given. This one didn't. And as the road pulled her farther from everything she knew, Lila found herself wondering, not who she had been given to, but what kind of man refused to claim what was already his. Tell me, would you trust a man who keeps his distance when he has every right not to? The heat sat heavy over Dry Hollow that afternoon, pressing down on the warped boards of the Carter house until even the shadows looked tired. Dust rolled slow across the yard, catching on the fence posts and settling in the cracks of the porch where Lila Mae Carter stood with her hands resting at her samu. She had been standing there long enough for the wood beneath her bare feet to warm through, but she hadn't moved. Out past the gate, the road shimmered in the distance, empty except for a wagon and a man beside it. Her father's voice carried first, low, then sharper, like a blade dragged across something dry. Can't stretch it any further, Silas. You know that. The man didn't answer right away. Lila watched him from the shade. He stood with his hat in his hands, turning at once, slow, like he was thinking through something that didn't sit right. He was taller than anyone in Dry Hollow, not broad in a way that made a show of itself, but built solid, like the kind of man who could lift more than he ever said. His shirt clung darker at the shoulders from work, sleeves rolled up, hands rough and still. Silas Boone. She had heard the name before. Everyone had. The man who kept to the ridge, fixed his own fences, spoke when needed, and not much more. Her father stepped closer to him, boots grinding grit into the yard. You know what I owe, Harold Carter said. You've seen the books. A folded ledger lay open on a crate between them, its pages curling at the edges from heat and use. Lila had written in that book herself more than once. Numbers neat, lines straight, none of it enough to hold back what had been coming. Silas glanced down at it, then away again, like he didn't need to see it twice. I'm not asking for more time, Harold went on. I'm offering a way to settle it. The wind shifted, pushing the smell of dry earth up toward the porch. Lila felt it brush her arms, but her chest had already gone tight. Silas's jaw moved once. What way? Her father didn't answer right off. He looked toward the house instead, toward her. Lila straightened without thinking, though she didn't step forward. Not yet. She'll settle the debt, Harold said. The words landed flat in the yard. No rise, no fall. Just a fact placed down like a tool. For a moment, nothing moved. A horse stamped once near the wagon. A hinge creaked somewhere along the fence. From down the road, someone led a mule past without slowing. Lila's fingers curled slightly at her sides, nails pressing into her palms. She didn't call out, didn't ask. The meaning had already reached her before her voice could. Silas didn't look at her. That was the first thing she noticed. He didn't turn his head, didn't measure her, didn't take her in the way men in town sometimes did when they thought she wasn't paying attention. He stayed where he was, eyes fixed somewhere just past the gate. No, he said, quiet. It wasn't loud enough to carry far, but Lila heard it. Her father did too. You think I'm offering because I've got other options? Harold snapped. You think I'd do this if I didn't have to? Silas's grip tightened around the brim of his hat. I didn't come for that. You came for payment, Harold shot back. This is payment. Lila took a step forward then, the porch board creaking under her weight. Father, she said. He didn't turn. There's no other way, he answered, already cutting her off. The sun pressed harder against the yard. Sweat gathered at the back of her neck, slid down beneath her collar, but she barely felt it. You're sending me, she said. Not a question. Harold's shoulders shifted, just once, then stilled. You'll go with him, he said. You'll live there. Work off what's owed. That's all this is. That's all. Lila let out a breath that didn't quite finish. Across the yard, Silas finally moved, just enough to shift his weight. His eyes lifted, but they didn't settle on her face. They stopped somewhere near her shoulder, as if even that might be too much. I won't, he started. Harold cut in. You take her, the debt's done. Clean. You walk away from this, you'll get nothing. Not now, not ever. Silas's mouth closed. The wind dropped. For a second, the whole place felt like it was holding still. Lila looked at the man by the wagon, at the space he left between them, at the way he kept his hands to himself. Then she bent and picked up the small cloth bag by the door. It had been packed that morning, quietly, without talk. Her father still hadn't looked at her. Get your things, he said, like she hadn't already. Lila stepped off the porch. The ground was hot through the thin soles of her shoes. Each step carried a small crunch of gravel, louder than it should have been. When she reached the yard, she didn't stop in front of her father. She moved past him. Silas shifted back a half step as she came near, giving her room she hadn't asked for. That too, she noticed. The wagon stood ready, one wheel propped against a stone. A coil of rope hung off the side, and a dented tin cup rested near the seat. Simple things. Used things. Nothing polished. Silas set his hat back on his head, not looking at her as he moved to the side of the wagon. I can help, he said, then stopped. Lila placed her bag inside on her own. She climbed up without taking his hand. Behind her, the door of the house shut. Not slammed, just closed, firm enough to say it was done. She didn't turn around. Silas circled to the front, took the reins, and paused. For a moment, it looked like he might say something else, something that would change the shape of what had just happened. He didn't. The wagon rolled forward. Dust rose behind them, slow and steady, swallowing the yard inch by inch. The Carter house shrank back into it, edges softening, until it was just another shape in the heat. Lila sat straight, hands folded in her lap. Silas kept his eyes on the road. The distance between them stayed exactly where it was, and neither of them reached across it. The road climbed slow toward Black Ridge, turning from packed dust into narrow tracks carved between stone and dry brush. The wagon creaked with each rise, wheels grinding over loose rock. Silas kept one hand steady on the reins, the other resting loose on his thigh, never shifting closer than he needed. By the time the sun dipped low enough to throw long shadows across the hills, they reached the edge of his land. It wasn't much. A small house stood under a crooked cottonwood, its boards bleached pale from years of sun. A split-rail fence leaned uneven along one side, patched in places with wire. Beyond it, a narrow stretch of land tried to hold on to life. Thin rows of corn, some standing, some bent where the wind had taken them. Silas pulled the wagon to a stop. For a moment, he didn't move. Then he climbed down, boots hitting the ground with a dull thud. He walked to the side, unhooked the latch, and stepped back. You can come down, he said, voice low, like he didn't want it to carry too far. Lila gathered her skirt and climbed down on her own. Her boots touched dirt, that felt different from dry hollow. Softer, but not kinder. Silas reached for her bag, then paused, his hand hovering just short of it. She noticed. "I've got it," she said. He nodded once and stepped away. The front door opened with a soft scrape. Inside, the air held the smell of clean wood and something faintly bitter, like old coffee grounds. The place was small, but everything had its place. A table near the window, 2 chairs, one repaired at the leg, a shelf with 4 plates, stacked careful. Nothing extra, nothing soft. Lila stepped in slowly, her eyes moving from one corner to the next. Silas stayed by the doorway. "I swept this morning," he said, almost as an explanation. "Didn't know what else to do." She didn't answer. She walked to the far wall, where a narrow door stood closed. Silas moved then. Not closer, but enough to reach into his pocket. He pulled out a small iron key, worn smooth at the edges, and a folded piece of paper. He held them out, arm extended, but not stepping forward. Lila looked at his hand, then at his face. He wasn't looking at her. His gaze rested somewhere near the floorboards between them. She took the key. The paper followed. "This room is yours," he said. "I don't go in unless you ask." The words settled in the space between them, quiet but firm. Lila unfolded the paper. The same sentence, written slow, careful, like someone who didn't write often but meant every letter. She stared at it longer than she needed to. Then she turned the key in the door. The room was small. A narrow bed, a clean blanket tucked tight, a basin with a pitcher of water set beside it, a window facing west, where the last light slipped in, thin and gold. Nothing else. Lila stepped inside and closed the door behind her. The click of the latch sounded louder than it should have. She sat on the edge of the bed, the paper still in her hand. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then her shoulders dropped, just a little, and the breath she'd been holding since the porch in Dry Hollow finally broke free. It came out uneven, quiet, not something meant to be heard. She pressed the paper flat against her lap. No one had ever given her a door that closed. Outside, she heard Silas's boots move across the porch, the creak of wood under his weight, then the sound of something being dragged, maybe a blanket, maybe a crate. Not the bed, not inside. Lila stood and crossed to the window. She pushed it open just enough to see the porch. Silas had laid out a thin bedroll near the far end, close to the wall. His hat rested beside it. He sat down once, tested the boards with his weight, then leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He stayed like that for a while, not looking at the door, not looking at anything, just sitting. Lila closed the window. Night came down slow over Black Ridge. The wind picked up, brushing against the house in long, steady passes, the kind that didn't knock, just stayed. She washed her hands in the basin. The water was cool, carried from somewhere not too far. He had brought it in before she arrived. Another thing she noticed. When she stepped back into the main room, a small pot sat on the stove. Steam curled faint from the lid. Silas was gone from the doorway. She hesitated, then lifted the lid. Beans, salted, simple. A tin cup sat beside it. One. Lila set the lid back down and stood there, listening. From outside, she heard the quiet shift of him settling on the boards. Not coming in, not waiting, just staying where he had put himself. She poured the beans into the cup and sat at the table. The wood was worn smooth under her fingers. Someone had sanded it down more than once. She ate slowly. Each bite tasted plain, honest. Halfway through, she stopped and looked toward the door. It remained closed. After a while, she set the cup aside, walked to the door, and opened it just enough to let the night air in. Silas didn't turn. He lay on his back now, one arm folded under his head, eyes open to the dark sky above the porch roof. "You didn't have to stay out here," she said. He shifted slightly, like the sound of her voice surprised him. "I'm fine," he answered. "Used to it." The wind moved between them, carrying the smell of dry grass. Lila rested her hand on the doorframe. "It gets cold up here," she said. "I know." He didn't move, didn't ask, didn't step closer. Lila watched him a second longer, then nodded once to herself and closed the door again. The latch settled into place. Inside, she returned to the small room and sat on the edge of the bed once more. The key lay in her palm. She turned it over with her thumb, feeling its weight. Not heavy, but enough to mean something. Outside, the boards creaked once under Silas's weight as he shifted, then stilled. Lila lay back against the pillow, eyes open in the dark. For the first time since the wagon left Dry Hollow, her hands loosened where they rested at her sides. She didn't know what this place would become, but it wasn't what she had expected, and that, more than anything, kept her from sleeping. Morning came in pieces. First the wind, brushing along the walls like it had somewhere else to be. Then the faint clink of metal, soft, careful. Lila opened her eyes to the pale light slipping through the window. For a second, she didn't remember where she was. Then she heard the stove. She sat up slowly. The room held its quiet. The key still rested on the small table by her bed, where she had set it down sometime in the night. When she stepped into the main room, Silas stood by the stove, his back turned. A dented kettle sat over the flame, steam rising in thin threads. He moved like he was trying not to make a sound, setting a cup down with more care than the thing required. He glanced over his shoulder when he sensed her, then looked away just as quick. "Didn't mean to wake you," he said. "You didn't." He nodded, like that settled something, and reached for a tin cup. He poured the coffee, then set it on the table. Not too close, not too far. Lila walked over and sat. The cup was warm against her hands. Real coffee, not just boiled grounds run thin. Another thing she noticed. Silas stepped back toward the door. "There's oats in the sack by the shelf, and salt pork if you—" He stopped, like he had said too much. "I'll be out back." He left before she could answer. Lila watched the door close behind him. Then she looked down at the table. 2 cups, one already half gone. She drank slowly. Outside, the day had turned sharper. The sky stretched thin and pale, the kind of blue that didn't promise much. She found him by the fence line, hammer in hand, driving a nail into a loose board. The fence leaned more than it stood. Silas struck the nail once, twice, clean hits. Then he pulled back, tested the board, and moved on without saying anything. Lila stepped closer. "You fix it every day?" she asked. He didn't look at her. "Every day it needs it." "That's every day." A corner of his mouth moved, just barely. "Seems that way." She watched his hands, big hands, scarred at the knuckles, careful with the hammer, careful with the wood. "Show me," she said. Silas paused. "Don't have to. I know." She met his shoulder, not his eyes. "Show me anyway." He handed her the smaller hammer from his belt, not touching her hand, letting it rest in the space between them until she took it. She set the nail against the board, lifted the hammer, and struck. Missed. The nail bent sideways. Silas stepped forward before he thought better of it. His hand closed around her wrist, firm, steady. "Watch your thumb," he said. His voice came out low, closer than before. Lila stilled. His grip was warm, solid, not tight enough to hurt, just enough to stop her. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Silas let go, stepping back like he had crossed a line he hadn't meant to. "Sorry," he said. "It's all right." She straightened the nail and tried again. This time it held. They worked like that for most of the morning. Quiet. The wind picking up and dropping again. The sound of hammer against wood settling into a rhythm that didn't need words. By midday, the sky shifted. Lila noticed it first in the way the light thinned. The hills to the west darkened, not with shadow, but with something building behind them. Silas stopped mid-strike and looked up. "That's not good," he said. The wind died all at once. Even the dry grass stilled. Then it came back harder. A low rush at first, then a hard push that carried dust and loose straw across the yard. The sky folded in on itself, gray rolling over blue like a curtain pulled too fast. "Inside," Silas said. Lila didn't argue. She gathered the tools and moved for the house, the wind catching at her skirt, pulling it sideways. The door slammed shut behind them, rattling in its frame. The first crack of thunder came without rain. The walls shuddered under the pressure. Outside something broke, wood snapping sharp and quick. "The coop," Lila said. Silas was already moving. He reached for the door. She caught his sleeve. "Don't," she said. "You won't make it." He looked down at her hand, then back at the door. The wind howled again, louder now, pushing against the house like it meant to tear it apart. Silas closed his eyes for a second. Then he stepped back. They stayed there, both standing, listening to the storm tear through what little the land had given them. When the worst of it passed, the silence came back slow. Heavy. The door creaked open. Outside, the yard looked different. The fence lay in pieces. The coop had caved on one side, boards scattered, wire twisted. The rows in the field were flattened, dirt torn open where the wind had dug in. Silas stepped out first. He stood there a long moment, one hand braced against his thigh, like something inside him had dropped with the fence. Lila moved past him. She went straight to the coop, pushing aside a broken plank, reaching into the mess. A chicken fluttered out, startled, then another. "Help me," she said. Silas didn't move. Not right away. Then he came forward, lifting boards, setting them aside, careful not to crush what might still be under them. They worked without talking. Mud clung to her skirt. Dust streaked his arms. The air still tasted like the storm. After a while, Lila held up a small cloth sack. "Seeds," she said, "still dry." Silas looked at it, then at her. "You saved those." She shrugged, like it wasn't much. Enough to try again. He lowered his head for a moment, breathing out slow. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I know." She didn't stop working. Late in the afternoon, the sound of hooves cut through the quiet. Silas stiffened. A rider came over the rise, coat dark against the pale land. He didn't hurry. Didn't need to. Cyrus Whitaker. He reined in near the broken gate, taking in the damage with a slow sweep of his eyes. "Looks like the weather's been unkind," he said. Silas stepped forward, placing himself just enough in front of Lila. "What do you want, Cyrus?" Cyrus didn't answer him. His gaze moved past Silas and settled on Lila. "There she is," he said. "Didn't expect to find her still here." Lila's fingers tightened around the sack of seeds. Silas didn't move aside. "The debt's not settled," Cyrus went on, easy as breathing. "Not in full. That means she's still part of it." The wind picked up again, lighter now, but enough to carry the words across the yard. Silas's shoulders squared. "She's not leaving." Cyrus smiled, thin and slow. That's not your call. Lila stepped forward then, just enough to stand beside Silas, not behind him. The land around them lay broken, the fence down, the field torn open. And still, she didn't step back. Cyrus Whitaker sat easy in the saddle, one gloved hand resting on the horn, the other loose at his side. He looked from the broken land to Lila, measuring something that had nothing to do with crops. "You've got spirit," he said. "I'll give you that." Silas didn't answer. He stood square, boots planted in the dirt, shoulders set in a way that didn't need to rise or threaten. Just there, enough to block the path without making a show of it. Cyrus's gaze shifted to him. "Debt don't change just because a storm comes through." "It was never hers," Silas said. "That so?" Cyrus leaned forward slightly. "Then why was she handed over?" Silas's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. "That was between you and Harold Carter." "And now it's between me and you," Cyrus said. Then his eyes flicked back to Lila. "Unless she's got something to say." The wind moved through the broken fence, lifting dust in small spirals around their boots. Lila stepped forward until she stood level with Silas, not behind him. Her fingers still held the small sack of seeds. She could feel the dry grains shifting inside, light but steady. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Cyrus studied her a moment longer than was comfortable. Then he gave a short laugh under his breath. "Not your call to make," he said. Silas moved then. Just one step, enough to stand between them again. "She stands here because she chooses to." The words settled into the air, like something placed carefully. No force, no push, just there. Cyrus's eyes narrowed. Choice don't carry much weight when there's money on the table. From the road behind him, a wagon slowed. Martha Doyle sat at the reins, her gray hair pinned back tight, a sack of feed beside her. She didn't drive past, didn't turn away. She stopped. Behind her, Jonah Pike leaned against the side of the blacksmith cart, arms crossed, watching without saying a word. Cyrus noticed. "So that's how it is," he said quietly. No one answered. The silence stretched. Not empty, just full of people deciding where they stood. Cyrus straightened in the saddle. "You've got until the end of the month," he said. "Then I come back, and I take what's owed." He turned the horse before anyone could answer. The sound of hooves faded slow, swallowed by the open land. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Martha clicked her tongue and nudged her wagon forward through the broken gate like it had never been closed to her. "Fence looks like it lost a fight," she said, climbing down. Silas exhaled once, low, like he'd been holding something back. "Storm took most of it," he said. "Storm don't nail boards back," Jonah added, already stepping off his cart with a hammer in hand. They didn't ask, didn't wait. Work began the way it did in places like this. Quiet. Steady. Hands moving where they were needed. Lila found herself standing in the middle of it, the sack of seeds still in her grip. Martha glanced at her. "You going to stand there all day, girl?" she said, not unkindly. "Or you going to put those to use?" Lila blinked once, then nodded. She moved to the field. The soil had been torn open, but not ruined, not completely. She knelt and pressed her fingers into it, feeling where it still held together beneath the top layer. Silas worked the fence a few yards away. At some point, he looked up. Just once. Long enough to see her kneeling in the dirt, head bent, hands steady. He didn't say anything. Didn't need to. By late afternoon, the fence stood straighter. Not perfect, but enough. The coop had been propped up with fresh boards, the worst of the damage pushed back into something that could be worked with. Martha wiped her hands on her apron. "Won't hold forever," she said, "but it'll hold for now." "That's enough," Silas answered. She nodded once, then climbed back onto her wagon. "Town'll be talking," she added, glancing between him and Lila. "Best decide what you want them to say." Silas didn't respond. Jonah tipped his hat and followed her out. The yard settled again. Quiet returned, but not the same kind as before. Lila stood, brushing dirt from her skirt. Silas walked toward her, stopping a few steps short. "You don't have to stay," he said. The words came out rougher than he meant them to. She looked at him. Really looked this time. At the lines cut into his face from sun and work. At the way he kept his hands still, like he didn't trust them to do the right thing without thinking. "At the end of the month," she said, "he comes back." Silas nodded. "I know." "And you'll pay him?" "I'll try." That was the truth of it. Nothing more. Lila lowered her gaze for a second, then lifted it again. "I'm going to town tomorrow," she said. Silas's brow tightened. "You don't have to." "I know," she said. The same words, but different now. "I need to," she added. He didn't ask why, didn't tell her no, just nodded once. "All right." That night, the house felt smaller. Not in a bad way, just closer. Lila sat at the table, mending a tear in the edge of her sleeve with a needle she'd found in the small tin by the shelf. The thread pulled tight between her fingers, steady and even. Silas stood by the door, looking out at the dark. After a while, she set the needle down. "You don't have to sleep out there," she said. He didn't turn. "I'm fine." "You were fine yesterday," she said, "and the day before." Silas shifted his weight. "That ain't the same thing." Lila stood. She walked to the doorway, stopping just inside it. "You gave me a room," she said. "You gave me a key." He nodded slightly. "That don't mean I get to take yours," he answered. Lila leaned against the frame. "I'm not asking you to take anything," she said. "I'm asking you not to give something up that doesn't need to be." Silas turned then, slow, like the movement itself needed permission. Their eyes met, for longer than before. "I don't want you to feel—" he started, then stopped. She waited. He tried again. "I don't want you to feel like you got no say in what happens here." Lila held his gaze. "I don't," she said. The wind moved softly through the open doorway, carrying the smell of dry grass and wood. After a long moment, Silas stepped inside. Not close, just enough. He reached for the blanket folded near the wall and laid it on the floor by the far corner, leaving space between it and her room. He didn't look at her as he settled down, but he didn't go back outside. Lila stood there a moment longer, then turned and closed her door. The key rested on the table. She didn't pick it up. That night, the house held two people under one roof, still apart, but no longer separated by a wall of open sky. Morning came with a thin layer of frost clinging to the edges of the porch rail, gone almost as soon as the sun touched it. The wind had settled overnight, leaving the land quiet in a way that made every small sound carry farther. Lila was already outside when Silas stepped through the door. She stood near the fence line, sleeves rolled, hair tied back with a strip of cloth she must have cut from something old. One of the broken posts lay at her feet. She had set it upright again, bracing it with a stone. She didn't look up when he approached. "Post won't hold like that," he said. "I know," she answered, "but it'll stand until we fix it right." Silas nodded once. He picked up a length of wire and wrapped it tight around the base, his hands moving slow, steady. Lila held the post in place without being asked. They worked that way for a while. No instructions, no questions, just the quiet sound of wire twisting, wood settling, boots shifting in the dirt. After some time, Silas straightened. "I'm heading into town," he said. "Need to see about lumber. Maybe sell the mule's harness." Lila let go of the post. "You'll get enough?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. "I'll get what I can." That was all. She nodded, brushing her hands clean against her skirt. "I'm coming with you." Silas looked at her then. Not long, just enough to weigh the thought. "Town's not—" he started. "I know what town is," she said. Something in her voice stopped him. He gave a small nod. "All right." The wagon ride into Dry Hollow felt different than the first. Less distance between them, though neither of them had moved closer. The road looked the same. The dust, the low buildings sitting quiet under the sky. But when they reached the edge of town, heads turned. People noticed. Silas kept his eyes forward. Lila didn't. She looked. At the storefront windows with their faded paint. At the general store where a bell rang soft when the door opened. At the small board nailed beside it with notices pinned crooked. Lost livestock, sale dates, a handwritten debt tally in one corner. Silas tied the horse outside the supply shop. "I'll be quick," he said. "I'll come in." He hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the air held the smell of flour and oil. A clerk behind the counter glanced up, then back down again, pretending not to see. Silas placed a bundle of tools on the counter. "What'll you give for these, chum?" he asked. The man lifted one, turned it over. "Seen better days." "They still work." The man shrugged, named a number lower than it should have been. Silas didn't argue. Lila watched. When the coins changed hands, she stepped forward, her voice calm. "You're paying less than half what they're worth." The clerk blinked. Silas looked at her. "They're worn," the man said. "So is everything out here," she answered. "That doesn't make it useless." A pause. The clerk shifted, glanced at Silas, then back at her. He added 2 more coins. Not much, but enough. Silas didn't say anything as they stepped outside. He just handed her the small pouch. "Keep it," he said. Lila looked at it, then back at him. "Why?" "You see things I don't." She held his gaze for a second longer than she used to. Then she nodded and slipped the pouch into her pocket. By the time they returned to Black Ridge, the light had turned soft and low. The fence still stood where they left it. The land still waited. Days passed. They worked through them. Boards replaced. Wire tightened. Seeds pressed into soil one by one, each set in place with care that didn't speak, but meant something all the same. Neighbors came again. Not many words. Just tools, hands, time. Silas accepted it this time. Didn't push it away. Lila kept the ledger. Not the old one from her father's house. A new one. She wrote slow at first, then steadier. Marked what they spent, what they saved, what they still owed. At the end of the month, Cyrus came back. Same coat, same horse. But this time, he didn't find them alone. Martha stood near the gate, arms crossed. Jonah leaned against the fence. 2 others from the road lingered just behind. Not a crowd. Just enough. Silas stepped forward and handed over the pouch. "All of it," he said. Cyrus counted. His mouth tightened. "Didn't think you had it in you." Silas didn't answer. Cyrus glanced past him at Lila. "Still here," he said. Lila stepped beside Silas. Not for you, she said. Cyrus held her gaze a moment longer, then closed the pouch and tucked it away. This settles it, he said. Silas nodded once. Cyrus turned his horse and rode out. No threats this time. No promises either. Just gone. The yard settled. The wind moved through the fence, but it held. Silas let out a breath. Done, he said. Lila looked at the ground, then back up at him. You never bought me, she said. Silas met her eyes. I know. That evening, the house felt different. Not bigger, just settled. Silas stood by the table, a small wooden box in his hands. Rough edges, but sanded smooth where it mattered. He set it down between them. Didn't open it right away. I made this, he said. Lila waited. He lifted the lid. Inside, a simple ring rested in the center. Silver, slightly uneven. The kind shaped by hand, not machine. It's not much, he said. But it's mine to give. He didn't reach for her, didn't move closer. I don't want you here because of a debt, he said. I don't want you here because you feel like you owe me anything. The words came slow, careful. I want you here if you choose it. Silence settled between them, not empty, full. Lila looked at the ring, then at him, at the man who had given her a key, a door, a space to stand without being told where. She reached out, not for his hand, for the ring. She picked it up and turned it once between her fingers. Then she slipped it onto her own. It fit. Not perfect, but close. Silas didn't move, didn't speak. Lila stepped closer, close enough that the space between them no longer held. This time, she said softly, I choose. His breath caught, just once, then settled. Outside, the wind moved through the land, but nothing broke. Not the fence, not the house, not what stood between them. And this time, neither of them stepped away. Out on Black Ridge, the wind still moved the same way it always had, low across the fields, brushing the fence lines, carrying dust from one season into the next. But the land didn't feel as empty anymore. Some things don't change all at once. A broken fence gets mended one post at a time. A field comes back row by row. And a life, well, that takes longer than most folks expect. Lila had once been handed over like something owed, a name written at the bottom of a page, meant to settle a line in a ledger. But somewhere between the storm, the silence, and the man who never reached for her without reason, she found something that couldn't be written down or traded away. A choice. And Silas? He never tried to take it from her, not once. That's what stayed. Not the debt, not the fear, not the way it all began. Just two people who stood their ground long enough to see what could grow if they didn't turn away. So if you had been standing there, with nothing but a hard past behind you and an uncertain road ahead, would you have walked away? Or would you have stayed and built something of your own? If this story lingered with you a while, there are more waiting just beyond the next ridge. Quiet ones, hard ones, the kind that stay with you longer than you expect. You're always welcome to ride along.